Good evening, Board Trustees. My name is Patrick Collins, and I'm representing Gold Rush Gaming. And I'm here tonight to address a couple issues. I'm also a former federal prosecutor who was the deputy chief of the public corruption section when I was there. And I know Rick, his company, and certainly I have enormous respect for the U.S. Attorney's Office and also the Illinois Gaming Board. And while I don't speak for them, I do want to emphasize a couple points that Rick made, because I think they're important for you all as you're doing your jobs. First of all, as Rick said, he did proactively instruct his lawyers, one of which is me, to talk to the U.S. Attorney's Office about their investigation. And they have told us that Rick is not a target of their investigation. I can also say, based on my review of the company records and my conversations with Rick, there is no reason to believe that there is any evidence to suggest any wrongdoing by Rick as it relates to Senator Sandoval, Mayor Tobolsky, and Mayor Getty, which are names that have been in the press. And I say that in a public forum with the cameras going because I think it's important that you know that and hear that from what we know. Secondly, the gaming board. And to me, the gaming board are tough, they're thorough, and they regulate gaming in the state of Illinois. Everything that Rick has said, and I'm privy to some of the details of the representations, Rick has made fulsome disclosures to the gaming board, and they've asked questions historically about these matters, and Rick has addressed those. Any suggestion, as was in the Tribune, that the gaming board was not shared the appropriate information is simply not true. Simply not true. And I will further add, we have no reason to believe there's any ongoing investigation by the gaming board, but if there's any inquiry by the gaming board, it is Rick's job, Rick's duty to proactively address that. And that is the way he's conducted business with the gaming board for 2012. It's the only way to do business with the gaming board. And that will be the way he does business in the future. He mentioned his compliance director, a man named Glenn Leonard, a 27-year Illinois State Police veteran, who is the full-time compliance director. When he has information, he goes to the gaming board directly without being asked, without a subpoena. That's the way, historically, Gold Rush Gaming has done business. And so I think it's important that you all know that his obligations to be proactive with the gaming board are something that not just Rick, but the 27-year veteran whose job it is to do that, does that whenever it's warranted. And again, I'm happy to try to address questions. Obviously, anything with the project or Rick can address. We have enormous respect for both of these governmental entities. They are going to do their jobs, and we don't speak for them, but we do speak for Rick's conduct and activities and his engagement with those important state agencies, state and federal agencies. And we wanted to share that with you tonight. Thank you.
Sir. Thanks for
Thank you.
your concern. Anyone from the board have any questions for Mr. Collins?
I have one. How do they, if the gaming board already went through everything that Rick had to do and his past dealings and so on and so forth, his businesses, and they give him racing dates, and then all of a sudden this blows up? How does that happen? I'm certainly, the gaming board didn't do their job, maybe? You know?
That's the last thing I would say is the gaming board didn't do their job. I think.
Oh, I agree with you. I'm not
We're
accusing
talking about
them
the
of
racing, we're talking about several different entities here. I mean, you're talking about the racing board and the gaming board, obviously two different entities.
Right.
Rick has been licensed since 2012 by the gaming board and has regular required reporting obligations to the gaming board. And again, we don't speak for the gaming board, and I don't want to speak. We have enormous respect. They're tough. I can tell you from experience, they're tough and they're thorough. And they license Rick. And they have an ongoing, as has been reported, in February, Rick has an updated process that he has to go through. And it's a rigorous process. And Rick and his team has complied with that at every occasion.
And Trustee Brady, and to clarify, so our process and played in the parks process, that they were not before the gaming board. As you mentioned, we were before the racing board, and I wasn't at the hearing, but they based their decision a few weeks ago on a letter that we received from the governor's office that said they were not interested in selling us the property. So there was nothing said about the gaming board and the issues that Mr. Collins and Mr. Heidner had brought up. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, we weren't even at that process yet, that
Okay.
part.
And again, I think Mr. Heitner's commitment to you and my commitment as counsel to the company is if there's a material change in any circumstance, we would tell you. And again, I think it's, transparency is an important hallmark of what he has to be in this business. It's what the gaming board requires, and that's an ongoing obligation. And I want to underscore how important Mr. Heitner takes that obligation and has historically.
I guess, and not questions for you, more to this board, what is our next step? Because not only did your name get dragged through ridiculousness, this village lost out on somebody coming in and cleaning up this property, which is a huge part of this. 100% cleaning it up front was gonna be done for us. And I guess I wanna know, what are we doing as a board with the state to say, who's gonna clean it up now? We had an answer for this. This was our answer. The racino and everything else that was coming with it was gonna be a huge benefit for our town. Not only our town, the surrounding towns and the state. This makes absolutely no sense. And I don't know when we talk about that, but we gotta do something now. If this isn't gonna happen, we have to go after the state to get this cleaned up. It's unacceptable to leave the toxins on that property that I know are on there, that we know can cause birth defects if it's dragged home to a pregnant mom. This is unacceptable that we sit here and just leave that property in the middle of our town. It's unacceptable, and we have to take action now. And I'm sorry that that happened, and I believe a lot of us can understand. You work really hard your whole life to keep your name, to do the right things in life. And then somebody comes along and decides they're just gonna send out something that makes up, it doesn't state anything. It's all these innuendos and, just nonsense for people to think that. I cannot believe that the state would go along and not sell that property for that reason, and I think we need to know what is their plan then. That's all.
Trustee Galante, I can, and you point out correctly, the correspondence we received, and I might have said the governor's office, it wasn't from the governor's office, it was from Kathleen Abbott at CMS, who, the village has been dealing with CMS since 2014 on this property, a long, long time. We were always clear with CMS that, again, it didn't matter about the end use, the village was interested in getting control of the property and cleaning it up. Mr. Hyder and his team, I had the proposal to, as you mentioned, again, do it all up front, which the state knew that as well. I guess what we've done since, in response to that correspondence, I believe 2 Fridays ago, we sent a letter to Ms. Abbott, who sent the letter to us, and I think all 3 sentences that said they're no longer interested in selling us the property. We've asked to sit down with them, explain that to us, what's their plan going forward, what's the plan for cleanup, things like that. We haven't had an answer to that
Well,
letter.
then legally, what do we need to do? It's unacceptable anymore. The cleanup, it's gotta get cleaned up. Either they clean it, if they're not gonna sell it, they must clean it up.
That's-
And everybody in this village should be up in arms about it.
That'd be another.
Yeah, we can talk about some of
We
those
have some
strategies,
thoughts,
but,
we can talk.
but I guess, that's where the ball is, so to say. We've asked them to sit down and meet and explain this to us and tell us what their plan is. And if they're not going to sell it to us, then who and what is their plan? So we've asked for that. It's gone unanswered for over a week now. I'm sure we'll be following up on that very soon.
One thing I have to add to it is, you're right, Diane. I mean, that land is pathetic. And we had an individual gonna spend hundreds of millions of dollars to clean that place up. And what's transpired's been very disappointing. Anyone else?
I just want to thank you for coming out and giving that speech. It was heartfelt. I appreciate you doing it in public. Thank you.
Number 9, receive comments from the public, but before we open that up, Dave, I just, if you could touch base real quick, give everyone an update on 175th Street between Oak Park and Ridgeland. I asked our lobbyist, Tom Mannion, to see if he could set up a meeting with Cook County so we could get that street fixed. Myself, Mayor Vandenberg, John Urbanski, Pat Carr, Dave, were you on that one?
Yes.
And Dave Niemeyer, met with Commissioner Morrison, and they sent crews out to do the repair work that they did, which was great. We didn't stop there. I also asked our lobbyist to set up a meeting with John Yonan, who is the Cook County Highway Department Superintendent, and at the North Street groundbreaking ceremony, I asked Senator Hastings if he could set up a meeting for us as well. So we had a meeting today downtown at the county building with Pat Carr, Dave Niemeyer, myself, Senator Hastings, John Yonan from the Highway Department, and they have committed to, not only we're gonna get $150,000 from the state for roads, additional, Cook County's gonna give us an extra $500,000 to fix the county roads. So, I don't know, Dave, if you wanna add anything to that, that's.
No, I think you summed it. It's, the 500,000 is for the county roads in Tinley, really, as it was explained to us, and this will all be in an intergovernmental agreement that will be coming back to the board. We'll be able to kind of define where we want to do this. I think the county's philosophy, and I think it's a good one, is they're starting to say, let's go back, the municipalities that know their communities best, rather than us trying to manage that, to let them manage that. And I think that was certainly good news, and the longer-term picture of, I think, as you know, we've been working with them on a total reconstruction and improvement project that would not only reconstruct the roads, but add new street lighting, storm sewers, et cetera, that the bigger project, it sounds like there's some money that was in the state budget for that, and we got some progress reports on that they're moving forward with right away, and so that sounds very optimistic that that larger project is going to happen, sometime in the next few years, and we don't, we'll know more once they kind of get through some of their right-of-way acquisition. But overall, it was an extremely positive meeting. So we're thankful to certainly the county and Senator Hastings for getting that $150,000, and obviously more to come. And I think we've been down this road with the county. We want to make sure we get the agreements in place, I think, before we celebrate too much, but certainly this is as good as news as we've had on that road in some time.
Yeah, it was very, and the lobbyist did a good job selling it too with St. George. That was another reason why
Yes.
Mr. Yonan decided to pay for a total, grinding the asphalt. So, after that, number 9, we'll open it up to comments from the public. Anyone care to wish to address the board?
Good evening. At the September 3rd Cow meeting, Trustee Berger asked if anyone had approached the village concerning opening up a dispensary. Mayor Vandenberg stated there have been correspondence. Kimberly Clark stated that some medical places have inquired where the town stands on this. In a FOIA, I wrote, provide any and all requests or inquiries concerning owning and operating a cannabis business in Tinley Park. The village replied, at this time, the village of Tinley Park does not have any records that are responsive to your request. Question, if there were correspondence and a couple of medical places showed interest, why was this not provided in the FOIA? Trustee Berg asked if we were approached, and the mayor said yes. And Trustee Gloss asked Mr. Niemeyer if he could share the information in an email with the board. Was there any emails shared?
In terms of the request, yes, yeah. I haven't seen your FOIA, so I'd have to look at your FOIA in terms of what.
Okay, I was gonna bring a copy up here, but, so if there was correspondence, why was nothing in a FOIA?
I think we need to review it. Again, I haven't, we'll have to look
Mr.
at it, we'll have
Stockley?
to get back to you.
I can look at the FOIA, we'll take a look at it.
Pardon me?
We can take a look at the FOIA, and as all FOIAs get answered here, I'm sure it was done correctly. I don't know the reasons without having it in front of me. I
Okay,
see the FOIAs.
because it was
Take a look at
stated, you stated, you know, that,
I understand, but
Okay.
we'll take a look at it.
okay, thanks. My thoughts concerning Rick Heidner and the Racino. Rick was willing to invest millions to clean up this toxic swamp on his own dime and bring a state-of-the-art complex and add more amenities to this entertainment corridor. Rick's dream to bring back the horse racing industry was derailed by driving forces. I hope that Rick will be vindicated and his dream of the building Racino becomes a reality, if not here in Tinley Park, then somewhere else. Thank you.
Good evening. First, I'd like to start out by thanking Mr. Heidner for sharing his story. It's always good to get both sides. When I first read these stories, it was very obvious to me it was a political assassination. The articles were eerily familiar to what occurred just 8 to 9 months ago in our own village, to some people that are sitting on the dais this evening. Those same people fought back with facts and the truth. I would hope that everyone would remember this. Facts matter. The truth matters. We had the perfect solution for the Tinley Park Mental Health Center. The village would purchase the property, sell it to Mr. Heidner. He would pay for the remediation and develop it into an entertainment district. The village would have a steady revenue stream, the developer would revitalize the horse industry, and the state of Illinois would earn tens of millions of dollars annually. Then the state decides not to sell the property after the ridiculous Tribune article. So what now? Tinley Park is left with 280 acres of a toxic dump. There are more than 150 barrels of unknown contaminants. There are lusts, there are USTS, huge piles of broken fluorescent bulbs, mold, asbestos in the flooded tunnels, buildings, and outside the buildings. Broken windows in most of the buildings, allowing the asbestos to go airborne. The buildings are tagged, meaning kids are on that property. They spray paint them. Probably half the buildings on the property. And the scrappers are still to this day illegally entering the property, stealing and stripping the copper from the buildings. $2 to $3 million of copper has been stolen and stripped from the buildings. The largest heist within the confines of Tinley Park. And our own police department can't even investigate it because it's state-owned property. These thieves are further contaminating the property. The scrappers have left asbestos all over the buildings with all the broken windows and the wind blowing through. Again, the asbestos goes airborne. The scrappers certainly are not taking their time to secure and remove the asbestos properly as they're cutting the copper from every building. They're throwing it in the back of their pickup trucks and driving through Tinley Park, again, allowing the asbestos to go airborne. We are very, very close to Superfund status on this site, if we're not already there. And where's all the water going? When they're stripping the copper and the tunnels are flooding and the buildings are flooding, are they pumping it? If they are, where's the water going to? We also have the runoff into the ditch along Harlem Avenue that flows into the Midlothian Creek that runs right through Tinley Park, as well as Oak Forest and Crestwood. Our residents are being put at a great health risk, all 58,000 of us. and anybody else who's traveling through Tinley Park in that vicinity. It's time to take a stand. Demand that the state of Illinois clean up the Tinley Park Mental Health Center, or sell us the land, and we'll sell it to Mr. Heidner and let him build his racino. If the state refuses, then we need to file a complaint with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, not the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. And even if, whatever they decide, file the complaint anyway. We have waited long enough. This property is going to do some incredible damage to someone at some point. We can no longer sit idly by and just hope that the state will go ahead and clean this up. They won't. They're not going to do it. So we need to fight back. And I want every resident to stand with me and fight back, because this has gone on long enough. They don't care about the land. They don't care about us. So let's fight back. A guilty man tucks tail, runs, and hides. An innocent man stands and fights. Mr. Heidner, keep fighting, because in the end, the truth will always win out. Thank you.
Let the record reflect, no one else wishes to address the board? Nope. Come on, Tim. Sorry, Tim.
Good evening. Mr. Heidner, I told you last time you spoke that if you were good to the people of Tinley Park, they would be good to you. I am so angry about what's going on here. When I read that Tribune article, those paragraphs and then what happened because of it, I'm so angry that this seems to be stopped. That this thing that was going to clean up this black hole, this toxic dump in our community was stopped by J.B. Pritzker. This is J.B. Pritzker, our governor's toxic waste dump now. He didn't make the mess, we all know that. But the man owns it now. He stopped this. He's the one that says the kids of Tinley Park should go play on that site. And they're playing there. They're making graffiti, they're breaking windows, they're breathing in this dust, they're playing in these chemicals. This is J.B. Pritzker's mess now. And I think this community needs to fight it. This board, you guys need to tell this governor, this is your mess. You own it. You claimed it. You stopped the cleanup. Come up with the $35 million, $40 million to clean it up now. Put a fence around that place. There are holes cut in the fence. I walked by. You could see the holes from the railroad tracks. That's what these kids are getting in there. The governor is going to have some kid's life on his hands. You're going to find a body in this place. One of these kids is going to get hurt, and it's J.B. Pritzker who said, hey, let's do nothing. And you guys as a board, you got to put the pressure on the state. You got to get the state to clean this site up. If they're going to stop this, they got to clean it up. If you guys don't, I will go to the United States EPA. I will spend my spare time making this complaint evident to the United States EPA, because the state is going to crush us here. They're going to crush us. We can't trust them. We can't trust the Illinois EPA to clean this site up. We're the little guy. We need federal oversight. It's J.B. Pritzker's mess. He put his name on it. These chemicals, this mess, the danger, what it's going to do to this community and the communities around us are J.B. Pritzker's problem now. You guys should make sure.
Let the record reflect this time, where no one else wishes to address the board. Item number 10, adjourn to executive session to discuss A, the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired. B, the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body. Is there such a motion?
Moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll adjourn to executive session, and then we will be back for the special board meeting.